Welcome to another Monday's live stream. I'm Bex from Social Media Executive, and today I've got a very special guest, Andrew Thorp, who is a consultant speaker coach, award-winning speaker coach, speaker of TEDx. Andrew, you're going to do a much better introduction than I'm doing. But basically today we're going to be talking about how to win your hearts and minds on social media. So again, if you're watching this live, please do say who you are in the chat, give us a shout out, tell us what you do and we'll give you a shout out. And if you're watching this on catch up, please do put any questions in the comments, say who you are, and we will come back to those later. And if you are watching this, please do give us a thumbs up so that we know you're watching as well if you don't want to join the chat. So without further ado, Andrew, please do tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, hi Bex, it's great to be with you and it's nice to sort of connect with the likes of Sam and others on the call. And I'm one of those people who reinvented themselves and decided that they were fed up with their main career and they wanted another one. So I come from an unusual background. I come from the golf industry and I spent 22 years in the golf and leisure industry. But the one thing that crosses over from that previous life to what I do now is actually public speaking. Because I've always loved doing it. Most people hate it. They'll shy away from it. I really like having a microphone. So it kind of made sense when I came into this line of work to focus on that. So as well as developing a sort of a career as a speaker, I was obviously helping people to do that as well. But it struck me that as well as some of the common difficulties they had with, basic death by PowerPoint problems, is that what they had to say wasn't very interesting.
Yeah.
And I know that's unkind. And what I mean is that they could have said something very interesting about their business, about their product, their service themselves, but they didn't. They tended to deliver a very dry, factual version of what they did, but they couldn't convey who they were. Or why they felt strongly about the work that they did. It was very on the surface.
Yeah, very corporate. So you get it a lot, don't you? Very. Oh, well, this is the information
it's safe, I think. Yes, it's tangible, it's factual, it's safe, and it doesn't delve into that awkward area of humanity and emotion and all those fluffy things that people find quite difficult to talk about in a business context. So I set about once again reinventing myself as a storytelling coach and consultant, kind of a made up job in the business world, helping people not just speak better, but actually have something to say that was much more arresting, which helped them to differentiate themselves with people who did the same kind of thing that they did.
And I think that's really interesting, isn't it? Because we all think of storytelling as those beautiful fairy tales that we were told as a child. But actually, storytelling is so powerful in business, isn't it? Because it really does help you make that connection with the outside world, doesn't it? And people often think, oh, storytelling is great, but they don't think to put it onto their social media, for example.
It's a kind of a double-edged thing for me, Bex, because on the one hand, people have heard a lot about it in the business world. It's quite a sexy term. They thought, well, yeah, we need to get into this storytelling stuff. I've seen people talk about it on the TED stage. This is really, really good. So that's fine. But on the other hand, there's still this association with fluffiness and, sending kids off to sleep at night. And it's not serious. So I think, first of all, you've got to define what we mean by story in the sense that I define it. And that's really how you frame a message and how you deliver it in a way, and you use this word connects. It's got to connect with the audience. It's got to get under their skin. It's got to make them feel something as opposed to just cognitively receive information.
Yeah.
So it is very much a connecting device and a framing device. And could be anything. I mean, a presentation in its entirety should be thought of as a piece of storytelling, not just things like an anecdote. A case study, I think a metaphor is a form of storytelling. It's a way of packaging a message in a way that will work for an audience.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And talking about connection, someone's just said, not sure at my end or yours, but the connection has failed. So I'm hoping it's their connection. So if anyone else is watching, please do say that it's their connection and not our connection, and that we are still live. Oh, she's back now. Someone's back now. Okay. They're still, so we're all right. Thanks, everybody. Always a slight panic when you are live. But yeah, absolutely. It is, isn't it? It's about making those connections, telling those. I think it's been a little bit more human, isn't it? And bringing that into there. It's that humanizing that information that you need to get over, and making it relevant to the audience by, like you say, connecting it with a case.
It's like if you're describing the experience that you've had, you can tell people what happened factually, but it doesn't give them a sense of what it was like to go through that experience. And that's why you hear a lot of journalists use that phrase, give me a sense of this or that. It's a really interesting phrase, that give me a sense, because it's the audience then is able to almost vicariously experience what they weren't actually there to experience, but they get a sense, a feeling of what it was like.
Yeah. And it is drilling into, as is the title, their hearts and minds, so they can understand that feeling and connect with it. And I know over COVID you were doing some really interesting work, weren't you? Because that was quite a challenging time, wasn't it? Because for you, Andrew, you normally a lot of what you do is teach people to speak in a room rather than on digital format like we're doing today, or like on social media. But actually, during lockdown, you had to slightly change your approach and help people in different ways, didn't you?
Well, you're right. I mean, my work is mostly either helping people present from a stage better or helping them have a conversation better. So I call that an SSS, which is a spontaneous speaking situation, which basically is a fancy term for a conversation. Okay. But when the pandemic struck and we were all incarcerated in our homes, I couldn't do that anymore. And although I've done a lot of stuff online over the years with blogging and YouTube channels and so forth, it forced me into really going heavy into the digital world. So one of the things that I did is I created a podcast. And I think you shared a link to it, I believe, Bex. It's called Leaning Forward. And it's called Leaning Forward because in my experience, that's what people do when they hear something interesting. So the podcast is all about helping people to say things that will get people to stop in their tracks, lean forward and listen. So again, it's very much on this storytelling and the delivery of a message theme.
Yeah, I'm leaning forward. So I'm leaning forward now.
So that's been a really interesting experience for me because I've always loved interviewing people, but the podcast is a mixture of interviews with people, but also shorter tutorial episodes where it's just me. I actually speak from a script, but I try and say it in a way that doesn't sound scripted. So we'll look at things like, how to use humor in business, how to use metaphors, and what it takes to tell a good anecdote, how to convert a dry case study into something more engaging. So these are the topics that tend to, go into the podcast. But obviously we touch upon those things when I actually interview people as well. And the other thing that I think really changed for me is that it made me realize that if you have a number of people physically in a room with you when you're talking to them, you can be droning on, but they're very unlikely to stand up and walk out because everybody will see and it's a bit rude and they don't want to, cause an offense and be the center of attention when they stand up. But online, if you're droning on, it's very, very easy for people to turn their camera off and go and do something else. And you've absolutely no idea what they're doing. And you have much less sort of hold on them, so to speak. So what it made me realize is that when you're doing something like an online workshop, you've got to make your content better to warrant holding people's attention.
Yeah.
So you have to find a way of really grabbing them and making them sit forward and listen and think, my goodness me, this is about me. And there's one particular technique that I've used. It's a bit cruel, but I will sometimes say, I've looked at all your LinkedIn profiles, if there's a group of, say, 16 of them, let's say, before this workshop. And I noticed that 3 of you have used a phrase in your About Me section, it's only 4 words long, but I think it's potentially one of the most damaging things that you can say about yourself. But it could also be viewed positively depending on how the audience, processes it. And then I just go quiet.
So what? And then we all go, well, what is it?
And I can see by the looks in their eyes, they're all thinking, oh my God, am I one of the 3?
Yeah, is it me?
And what are the 4 words he's talking about? I don't remember saying anything unusual. And then I say to them that I've just made the whole thing up, but I wanted to say something that really got their attention.
Yeah.
And then I have to apologize for being a bit mean. But it's just an example of when the audience really sees themselves in what you're talking about, they will pay attention. In the same way that if you're working with an audience and you say, now, Bex, you and I were talking about this in the break, weren't we? Then you're thinking, oh my God, he's talking to me. I better pay attention now. Yeah. And then whoever sat next to you thinks, oh my goodness, he might ask me something next. I better pay attention. So it's that ability to connect with people, which I think is one of the things I've had to get better at doing online.
Yeah, and it's very hard because it's very easy. And particularly when you do lives, I know when I first started doing lives, it's very easy to just go, quick, get it over with fast, deliver what you want to say. But actually it is about making that connection and giving that value, isn't it, to who's
it is. And I think that point you make about blurting it out quickly is very interesting, because people usually do that when they're nervous or when they're conscious that the audience's attention span's short and they're on the verge of losing it.
Yeah.
So let's blurt it out quickly.
Yeah.
So,
and actually
it gets it over with quickly, and then secondly, it means that I've got their attention for a nanosecond. I better get it in there quick.
Yeah, and actually, we've got someone watching who says they really struggle with public speaking. So, what would be a little tip for someone who is really quite nervous, be it on video or when they first go on stage? Is there any sort of industry top tips to help you overcome those nerves initially?
Well, I mean, there are other episodes, I'm sure, of your particular podcast or your broadcast which cover this in more detail. But I think you've got to be familiar with your material. But that doesn't necessarily mean knowing it all by heart, because when you try and do that, you put yourself under a lot of pressure, because if you forget a little bridging phrase that gets you from the first bit to the second bit, then you're in a bad place.
Then you're stuck. Then you go into panic mode, don't you? And
so I think much better is to have a series of triggers. If, for example, you're presenting something and the triggers would be, say, a picture or maybe a couple of lines on a screen about something that you're very, very familiar with. So you should be able to access the knowledge you have about that thing. So as long as the triggers are all lined up in the order that you want them to, then you should be okay, because you've got you're intimately familiar with that thing on the screen.
Yeah.
But I think if you're trying to memorize long bits of text or script in your head, that's really, really problematic. And generally speaking, I think when you're nervous, that you tend to overcome that the more you do it, because you habituate. You just get used to the symptoms of sweaty palms, heartbeat racing. And it's the reaction that you have to the symptoms that actually causes anxiety with public speaking. So if you get used to feeling the symptoms, you begin to habituate and relax a little bit more into the experience.
Yeah, so embrace them, appreciate you feeling a bit nervous, and just go for it. And I think I always think as well, because I plan my live streams when I've not got a guest, and I have little post-it notes. So little post-it notes, right, my little prompts around the camera. They help me as my little prompts, because I think you're absolutely right. Sometimes if you pre-prepare to over-prepare, you miss a bit out. You go into panic mode, but actually the audience doesn't know you've missed anything out, do they?
They don't know.
So they don't know. Yeah.
I heard David Mitchell, the comedian, the satirist, talking about performing on a stage, and he said the main thing that the audience wants is they want to feel in good hands, to feel that they're in good hands or safe hands. So if something goes wrong, as long as you don't panic and you maybe sort of play with it or use it a little bit, their perception of you actually elevates.
Yeah.
But it's when you're looking, a little bit rocky because you're panicking when something goes wrong or doesn't quite go to plan. That's when they get nervous, because they'll mirror your awkwardness and your nervousness.
Yeah. I mean, Sam says going bright red is never a good look.
But again, you're very conscious of it. And I know Catherine Sandlin has spoken about this sort of transparency thing, where the illusion of transparency, I think she calls it, where you assume the audience can see what's going on inside you, and they can't. No. And you think, my God, I'm going crimson. But really, they're more interested in, what you're saying and how you're putting it, and whether it's of value and relevant to them.
Yeah. And I think that's the key, isn't it? Whether it's value and relevant to you. We've got someone who's in a PR consultant working with charities who loves storytelling through the written word, but really struggles doing the same verbally. And I think that's what you said before, Andrew, wasn't it? It's just about just putting yourself out your comfort zone, making that first step. I remember when I went live for the first time on social media. Obviously I do it every week now, I was just like, I was sweating. I was like, so my heart was going. I did all my makeup perfectly, I went in and I was just like, and it took me about half an hour to press that live button. And then I kind of did it, rushed through it, and then went, and then I went, God, that was awful. But actually, 3 people went, oh, that was really useful. Thanks, Ben.
Yeah. So no, I think you exaggerate how badly you think it's going, and they don't see it to nearly the same degree that you're feeling it. But the person who just said about verbal storytelling is actually really difficult to do. It's a very, very skillful thing to do. And this is where I think practice comes in. It's like any skill, you have to practice it. You have to try something on a friend or a colleague or a partner. Say, what do you think of this? How can I sharpen it? How can I make it better? So typically people will spend too long with the setup in a story where people lose interest. They can't keep track of what's going on, and they don't get to the drama quick enough. Get to the bit that's funny, or they'll get a reaction quicker rather than, having a great long setup for it.
Yeah, and I think that's really key, particularly if you're presenting on social media in a video, is get them engaged from the first few seconds, because like you said earlier, Andrew, if they're not interested, they're just not going to bother watching your video. No one's going to know. They can't walk out the room, can they? It's not, no one's going to know if they stop watching. So if you get the best bits, the juicy bits, the interesting bits, the ones that really connect at the beginning.
Isn't it interesting that we live in this digital world now where we always assume that attention spans are very, very short, but we also live in a world now with binge watching, where we watch an episode of Succession, and then should we watch another one? Should we watch another one? And then it's like 4 a.m. We've watched like goodness knows how many. And that's because of the quality of the storytelling, and it's because we're drawn in so that we care, and it's because at the end of an episode they leave it hanging. So we want to know what happens next. So these are all great lessons to learn, I think. So although we live in this digital world, there is precedent for holding people's attention to a screen for a long time.
There is, absolutely. Well, Wayne's just said he used to try and memorize everything at networking events, so that he would just read it out verbatim, but it never worked. Knowing your key topic is definitely key, but he doesn't think he's mastered this yet, though.
Well, mastery is a pretty high level to get to. Even just getting reasonably competent is quite a good level to get to. But this is where, you've heard me talk a lot about the library. Build up a library of things in your head, little anecdotes, case studies, sayings, metaphors. And when you can reliably pull something out of that library and deliver it confidently, that's a skill that I call rehearsed spontaneity. So in other words, it seems in the moment, but you've actually told that story, that anecdote, that metaphor countless times so that you can reliably do it.
I think that's a really good point, because actually people often shy away from using an anecdote or a fact more than once, because they're like, well I've said this before, and so-and-so might have been at that event, or that they might have already watched this video, but actually people don't always remember, do they? Or most of the people who've been rewatching won't have seen the other one.
And I think, partly it's about having enough in the library. If you've only got 3 things in there, then you're probably going to, or you'll get bored telling it anyway, never mind other people having heard it before. But also to refresh it regularly. So if something's happened that morning on the way to work or whatever, that's got to go in the library. Tell it to yourself a couple of times in the car when you're driving somewhere, and then it's there ready to be used.
Yeah. And actually, when I know you were telling me a story, Andrew, when you were during COVID, you did some 1 minute, what did you call them? 1 minute mentors. And I thought this was really interesting, because I think, tell us a little bit about that, because I think that would be really useful for people watching.
Well, it still exists. It's on YouTube. I haven't really done anything with it for a while, but it just struck me that people who were very much in the service industries typically weren't being paid because their work dried up during the pandemic when they were stuck at home. Yeah. But it struck me that their work still had value. It wasn't that it didn't have any value anymore. It's just that, temporarily the market dried up because they couldn't deliver it. So I created a channel whereby they could send in a 1 minute piece of wisdom from within their area of expertise to basically showcase how good they were at what they did. Yeah. So it's like a bit of putting something back into the business community in a way. So I sort of created the site and invited people to send material into me. So some of it was my own, but a lot of it is from other people. So you can still find it on YouTube.
Yeah. Oh, well, I'll grab the link later. But I think I like that idea, because you were also challenging people out of the comfort zone to go on video that can be shared on social media, but to keep it to a minute, And the thing about social media is people are scrolling through, they absorb information, they want information straight, there and then. So just grabbing people's attention for a minute can be really quite powerful. And if they can practice, I thought that was lovely, because they could practice with you, a friendly companion, to sort of help them and coach them through it. And hopefully that then led to them creating lots more videos.
Yeah, I mean, I did offer to, if they wanted any help to create that 1 minute, I offered to help them, with just as a sort of putting something back, so to speak. But to know it was an interesting experiment at the time when we were experimenting in many different ways, not just with that, but with things like baking and cooking and what have you.
Yeah, and all the different ways to do activities outside. Okay. Well, so what would you say to someone who's starting out, who's a bit nervous, because we've had a few people come on today thinking, oh, God, they're struggling with video content. What would your 3 top bits of advice to be for those people who are really struggling, just to sort of finish off and go, right, this is what we need you to do?
I would say don't be afraid to make it sort of edgy. And maybe humorous. Don't just say bland stuff that's a bit vanilla that you've heard other people say. Try and find something, a bit of detail, I call it specificity, which will help it stand out and really stop people in their tracks. And be animated, really show that you like this kind of stuff that you're talking about, and that will help it come across better.
And that's just the way to connect with people, isn't it? People just a little bit sometimes go into a serious mode, but actually, if you are a little bit more informal, I saw, I don't know, some of Zena Barrick, she sometimes watches some of these videos. She's been on some of my training, and she's done some LinkedIn videos. And the one I always remember was the outtakes. She'd not done a video, so she set up a camera on the tripod, and the video just fell off as she was talking. And she posted that video on LinkedIn, and it did phenomenally well, because
the most popular one.
Yeah, and it connected, because we're all human at the end of the day, aren't
Just
we?
on that point, Bex, I think it was Jordan Peterson who once said that there are 3 types of things that happen to us in life. There are positive things, there are neutral things, and there are negative things. The neutral things, people don't care that you got out of bed at 7 a.m. and then you made yourself a cup of tea and then you had fried eggs and what. They don't care, because there's no reason I need to know that. It's just neutral.
Yeah.
If you only ever talk about things that have gone well, you won't be very popular because people will compare their own life to what you're talking about and they won't like you then.
Yeah.
So negative things, stuff that goes wrong, like the tripod falling over, is what people love to see. But you can still convert something negative into something positive by, for example, how your ego was brought down to earth because something daft happened to you. We like you a little bit more when you do things like that, or how you overcame an obstacle. Yeah. So that's the interesting stuff with storytelling, not neutral and not always positive.
And that's the one that connects with people and connects with their hearts and minds, doesn't it? Oh, well, thanks, Andrew. I've really, really enjoyed talking to you today. And Sam's actually just said she's going to be posting a perfect example of a Zoom blunder this week. It's very funny. So, brilliant. Well, we'll look out for that one, Sam. Thank you for that. So if you want to connect with Andrew as well, you can find him on LinkedIn. So do have a look. Make sure there's no E on the end of that Thorp as well, because that's a common mistake, isn't it, Andrew?
It is indeed,
and they won't find you if they put an E on the end. And again, thank you so much for joining us. Again, today's live stream has been brought to you all by the Social Flock. We've got Barbara in the background. So if you need help and support with creating consistent and compelling social media content, I run a group where we all come together and we write our content together. We sense check it with group members, we support each other, and we help each other with ideas as well. So if you're interested in joining the Social Flock, then please do have a look. I'll pop the link in the comments. It's only £45 a month, and we get loads of webinars and training. So please do have a look at that. And next week, because you were talking about that, Andrew, wasn't it? Next week, I'm going to be talking about how you can grow your followers on social media. So please do join me next week at 12:30 for another live stream. And thank you, everybody, for watching. And most importantly, thank you, Andrew.
My pleasure. Thank you all.
See you all again soon. Bye.